Graph science video. Yay. Comments. It's time, I think. But anyway, we'll do it anyway. Some comments are actually, people went to the trouble, they wrote stuff, so I'll write virtually. Virtually. That word's become a funny word now, right? Because I've seen a few Krauss videos and they keep talking about this. It's like even when they're talking about nothing, they say, oh well, it's nothing, but there's still virtual particles and stuff. So virtual particles are neither something or nothing, apparently. So they're not a fruit or a vegetable. Well, anyway. The explanations of Gary Mosher are technically false. Okay, if they're technically false, then, I mean, technical is kind of a technical word. So then you would think you could give me a technical explanation of the technical limitations or falsenesses. The falseness should be technically explainable if you're saying they're technically false, right? And it's just this, anybody can, I can say that I can just say that to every single thing everybody ever says in the universe anytime. I'll just say, your comment is technically false. Period. I've said so. We're done now, right? Because I've said they're technically false, so we're done, right? I mean, you can't see how that's just obnoxious. I mean, I don't know how you get along with anybody with that kind of attitude, fella. Also, Brian Greene is technically a physicist. And technically that means he's infallible. Oh, okay, so yeah, the religious people were wrong. God's not infallible. Physicists are infallible. Of course. Now it all makes sense. While some well-known hermit in the woods, well, I'm not all that well-known, but it just seems pretty, like Newton was a frickin' hermit in the middle of a city. Frankly, Galileo didn't go too far either. In the woods of Mendham, New Jersey is not. Well, there, you've certainly explained everything. Okay, now we all got it. No, we don't have anything. It's just pretty much useless. So, let's see. Gary, wish you would explain the idea you had that the universe is a sheet of nothing and we are a crack like an error or something. Well, there's nothing really to explain. It's just a simple it's just a simple statement. I mean, this whole something from nothing thing, this whole why is there something, what is infinity, those are all really tough questions. And yeah, all I can argue is that the universe of nothing is still something, in the sense that it's a lot of nothing. A lot of nothing, you almost say, well, when there's enough nothing, that's a something, because that's a lot of nothing. And so you can almost argue that something's maintaining it or producing it or something. And you just think that, well, if something goes wrong with nothing, what would a wrong nothing look like? Right? I mean, an error in nothing would look like what? So I guess that's kind of the argument. Like an error in nothing would probably have to be something, right? Because if it was nothing, then it wouldn't look like an error. So, you know, if you have a white space and something goes wrong, then it's going to look like it's going to look like a 0 or a 1 or a 2. I mean, or you know what I mean? It's going to look like something. It's going to be a something. So it's just a simple. We have to play just word games with the idea of something and nothing, because there's no other way to do it, right? The origins of everything. Well, yeah, you just have to play word games because it's not conceptuable, I don't think. Somebody may be able to conceive it. I just haven't heard a good conception of it besides what I just said, which is, if something went wrong with nothing, what would the wrongness look like? It would look like something. Right. Okay. Running out of cigarettes. Yeah. Let's see. The corpus of modern physics is not something you can pick and choose from. Why not? Wait. Every theory depends on everything else. Well, I don't think that's even true. Okay, there's lots of positions. You start with a few premises, and you can choose what premises you start with, and So I don't know if everything is exactly dependent on everything. You're saying so. Every theory depends on everything else. I'm not sure if that's true or not. I mean, there's certain things I suppose almost everything might be dependent on, like the speed of light and this idea that there's something and nothing, but you can have some very simple premises and go pretty far before you need any new premises. But whatever, it's another useless statement. What does this have to do with me? I'm arguing for a new origin of perception. I'm arguing for a new starting point. Gravity caused by push, not pull. You cannot claim an absolute space and time and still account for gravitational lensing, for instance. Well, I've already done that in so many videos. I'm saying gravitational lensing is refraction. I'm saying if you're seeing lensing, you're not seeing gravitational lensing, you're just seeing refracting, diffraction, lensing, and it's being caused by substances, densities of particles, rings of material, that kind of thing, and it's not being caused by gravity. But regardless, you have to go all the way. It has nothing to do with the absoluteness of space and time. You don't need an unabsolute space and time if you have as a premise that light can be bent by gravity. I mean, all I have to do is say, which I don't believe, but let's just say, if I say light is something, so light is a material thing spinning, then it's subject to gravity, and then it can be bent. So why would absoluteness of space-time, of velocity, that's what we're really talking about when you say that, why would the idea that there is a difference between moving and not moving, that there's an absolute to your condition. You're either in perfect balance and not moving in any directions, or you are moving in some combined vector direction. Every moment of time, your body, your substance, has a tendency to move in a direction. See, this is where it gets complicated. Because, fundamentally my argument is I'm made of zillions of little pieces. And the zillions of little pieces at any one moment aren't all going the same direction. That's what Brownian motion essentially is the fact that every little piece is jittering in a different jitter, and you can only measure its velocity by taking a time interval, because at any one moment its velocity can be in any direction. It's going to be in some direction for the absolute quanta that you're made of. The quanta are always going in some direction every single second at the speed of light. So their velocity is absolute in the sense, from the quanta's perspective, there is no not moving, there's only moving. And they all move the same speed and just in all different directions. But I'm just saying, when you combine all of the little bits inside of you, there's a leftover, a remainder. If you just cancel out all the ones going straight up and all the ones going straight, you eliminate all the opposing vectors, and whatever you're left with is where you're going over time. But like I said, at any specific moment in time, you can be going faster or slower. So as the solar system travels through the Milky Way galaxy, obviously when the planet Earth is on one side of the sun, we're going faster because our combined speed with the galaxy has us going faster. And then when we're going the other side of the sun, we're going slower. We're still going fast, but we're going a little bit slower because now we're negating the movement we had in the galaxy. I mean, but there's no rule. You're just saying there's a rule. I say so. Certainly the God we trust, some scientist, some physicist with a degree, that infallible God says so, therefore you can't say anything else. And I'm saying I don't see any rule against absolutes, and I certainly don't see how a rule about velocity, that somehow we can't possibly have zero velocity, how that rule that you made makes gravity impossible to create lensing of light. by your theory of gravitational lensing. How does it change the speed of light? It doesn't change it at all. So, I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, I don't know how have you gotcha? I don't see any gotcha there. Also, you cannot philosophize about physics phenomena and their origin on a materialistic foundation any longer. Again, just a dogmatic statement. We have proven beyond any reasonable doubt, that's their statement, that photons have no place in space, that they're completely non-material, non-real things. They're ghosts, and the ghosts go somewhere and paint graffiti and say, I was here. So they're ghosts, and they fly through space, and then when they get somewhere by ghostly power, then they write, I was here. Oh, great. I can't defeat that fundamental truth. It's so fucking proven. No. Physics is simply too much developed. Well, I would argue that, yes, it's developed on a wrong map. It's built on quicksand. It's fallacious fundamentally in its premises and its extrapolations. They're all made up mush. So in that sense, it's a well-developed recipe of bullshit. You're at least 2,200 years late. No, it's 300, over 300 years ago where somebody speculated about the idea of gravity being a push force. And there was a choice, right? And obviously, physics made a choice, and I'm arguing they made the wrong choice. And the choice they're stuck with, they still can't even explain anything. They can't explain inertia. They don't even explain gravity. They don't explain gravity. You think to me, it's just like basically saying God done it. To say the magical dead space bends to tell matter what to do. Let's see. You're at least 200 years late, where gentlemen scientists could disagree and dispute such wide-ranging paradigms and absolute space and time. Well, I think that's just silly. Gentlemen scientists have never had as much power as they have now. I mean, you got the full internet. You have basically, advanced science courses taught online. You see the lectures. Yeah, okay, you don't get to do the homework and all this other crap, but I mean, you get the substance of it. You can certainly buy any book you want to buy. So how do you defend that statement? Gentlemen scientists have never been more enabled to acquire competency. Now, you want to say, I haven't acquired enough competency. That's okay. But yeah, I don't bother doing all the extrapolated math. I'm more of a theorist. I understand the concepts. And I'm saying, well, yeah, I'm not going to waste my time spending 2 weeks doing a mathematical problem. That's got so many abstract elements to it that you lose all sense of the physical dynamics. So I'm going to make a map. Okay, I'm going to make a geometric map of this reality. And you'll just be able to take out a ruler and measure it off the model. I'm going to make a model that doesn't need strangled math. I'll make a model where all you have to do is take out your ruler, measure it, run the model for a second or two, take out your ruler and measure it, and then you're done. The experiment's done, because the model's going to represent the reality. Asshole. Anyway, this wide-ranging paradigms as absolute space-time. Well, anyway, now you're saying absolute space-time, but this whole idea, again, you want to combine space and time and call them dimensions, and that's your prerogative. I'm saying they're not dimensions, they're not things. They're not. There's 3 dimensions: forward, back, up, down, left, right. Those sets are the 3 sets that exist. There's no other sets of reality. Nowadays, physicists disagree about little stuff. Yeah, well, I don't think physicists even understand each other, and they're all just sitting in some sort of applause, what do you call those, dome, and they're just, you know, applaud my big brain because I can do calculus. They're not even doing any thinking anymore. They're just jerking off to the, oh, I'm smarter than you bullshit. Like disputing the figures of the physical constant 20 places behind the decimal point. You say they're doing that. I'm saying they probably have more substantial disagreements. And again, it does scream undone, doesn't it? That you have 1/3 of the physicists believing Copenhagen, 1/3 believing many worlds, 1/3 believing some bastardization of voodoo. So you think that makes you all look so credible? Physicists agree about everything except they can't tell whether the photon's invisible or not. Yeah, right. There are almost no disagreement with 99.99% of physics. I mean, it's just some bullshit. Physicists that general relativity and quantum mechanics are both the most fundamental theories of the universe. Well, it's certainly true that they like what Einstein did because Einstein created an explanation for gravity. But as I've pointed out over and over again, it's not an explanation, it's a demonstration. And it's a lie, it's a fraud in the sense that he created a fake dimension to create a place where he could create energy and destroy energy and break his own rules that you can't do that. So he made gravity an internal force living in space-time, so he didn't have to account for the energy of it, because he just blamed it on gravity. I mean, it's just so obviously wrong a thing to do. And clearly the math leads to preposterous ideas where you can have endless gravity because you can just make the well as deep as you want, and the well just becomes this straight line. And velocities, all of a sudden matter is able to acquire velocities well above the speed of light. That's how they cram all of the universe into half the size of a neutron. You can't do that rationally. You can't do it sensibly. You can only do it mathematically when you have an accurately defined reality. And bent space isn't an accurate description of reality, and it's not an accurate description of the convergence that creates gravity. And quite obviously, if you think about it in 3 dimensions, and you understand that it's not a bend in space, that's a 2-dimensional model, right? It's a 3-dimensional reality. So you have to somehow make that convergence work on all 3 dimensions. So you have to create basically an orange that pulls the universe into it. And then you have to explain, well, where does all that universe it's pulling into it go? And you can't understand how it would make a lot more sense to realize that the force probably is coming from the outside than from the inside. Because now you don't have to explain where the force goes. You have to explain where it came from. And that we can do with microwave background radiation. That gives you a clue. That gives you a cause just looking to make an effect. And it certainly gives you an indication that there could be a lot of stuff, a lot of energy in the field. And that energy in the field is what's providing the pressure that pushes things together. Physicist, relativity. Okay, yeah, well, again, relativity. Again, it's just so. So again, let's go back to this idea of null space, and how you could test this. So I think it can be tested. I mean, I think you can deduce absolute velocity, because all you really have to do. I think somebody pointed this out in the comments somewhere, so this might be redundant, but take light. Okay, yeah, superior mind. Let's go with this. Well, I'll use his comment to say my thing. You cannot claim absolute space-time. Okay, so baby steps. So what is your understanding of the constant C? And I just want to see your level of understanding. What do you suppose is meant by time 0? T0, I guess that's time 0. More importantly, I guess, how I would restate that is that we know what the speed of light is, right? It's a constant. It's doing this speed of light thing. So take just that. Take a photon and reduce its speed. You know, understand that you can theoretically you could just cut its speed in half, and then you could cut its speed in a quarter. You could get back to some point, some zero, and that would be a starting point. That would be a point that we might agree that is velocity zero. That piece of space, okay, the photon, if I could stop it, okay, if I could reduce all of its speed, that thing would be at velocity zero, right? Because I've taken away all possible velocity. The fastest thing that we've known universe, and I've extracted all velocity out of it, that would be a 0 point. So then what we do know is that if I could see exactly what a photon, if we do the Einstein thing, and I could sit on a photon and go from time 0 to some point in the future, and just extract what happens as that photon accelerates to the speed of light, and see what it sees, have a picture of that. Whatever is moving in that picture would tell me what's moving in the reality. I would see things absolute velocity, because all I'd have to do is extract what I'm seeing, you know, and just reverse it. So anything moving has to be moving, so to speak. Anything not moving would be moving. I meant to say it the opposite way. I mean, I'm just saying I could certainly understand what something would have to be doing. Something would have to be going, if I'm going this way, all the stuff going exactly the opposite way, everything I would see going that way would be stuff that was at t02, was at the same zero velocity. So anything that didn't move in my image in the direction of my direction, and everything that was going in the opposite direction at exactly the same speed as me, would be something else that had zero absolute velocity. Now, whether there's a way to test this or not, I don't know, but I'm just saying that's the grounds for a test. All right. If a unification can be mustered at all is an open question. Why? Well, I just think open by what? I mean, again, I could say that about every unanswered question in the universe. I could say, oh, gee, that's just too, it's open whether you can even answer that question. Okay, you're saying, that sounds like you're trying to say it's some sort of, we have reason to think it's impossible. I don't think there's any reason to think it's impossible, and I think the facts that they're ignoring, the fact that the speed of magnetism is the same as the speed of light and the speed of gravity, that there's certain patterns, the inverse square rule, that all of these forces seem to obey the same vector straight line force application. That's a straight line force application scenario, the inverse square rule. They all have it. I mean, there's huge clues that unification is right there to be grabbed. There's not any, I don't see any clues saying it's not grabbable, and the only thing in the way is quantum bullshit. So if you got rid of quantum bullshit, you don't have a problem with the big universe and the small universe. It's only the quantum crap where you say the rules are changed on the small level. That's when you say, well, unification becomes difficult, because yes, you can't pretend to have invisible ghosts flying through the cosmic universe, because that lie is more obvious. Because your ghosts will have to be huge. Anyway, that you cannot unify physics in your armchair with the help of a video camera and a cassette, I don't even know what that means, seems obvious. Oh, cigarette. Yeah, well, again, see, it seems obvious to somebody who doesn't think at all. Because, again, this internet, this information superhighway creates armchairs that can fly through information at incredible speeds and with incredible efficiency. So you're just, I guess you're just, what's the word for it? I guess you're just gapped, buddy. I guess you're going to have to, get out of your 1929 myopic view of the universe and try to catch up to the rest of us a little bit. You need mathematics and lots of it. Well, that's a rule I would argue that's just crap. I mean, most of the math before Einstein was really comprehensible math in the first place. I mean, it certainly wasn't strangled into, equations where, well, if it's a Monday, that's a 1, and if it's a Thursday, that's a 0, and, this kind of bullshit. So, sorry, I don't buy that you need to create just mathematical models. You can create geometric models, you can create physical models, and there's nothing stopping you from doing that. Chemistry makes a lot of physical models, and chemistry certainly thrives on, it doesn't need to go beyond crude calculus to understand what happens over time, because it doesn't really have to account for a bunch of minutia, because it's not trying to calculate every moment of time. It's just caring about the fact that at time 1, which could be 1 second, or 0, the time 2 could be 5 seconds. It doesn't really have to worry about tiny gradations of reality. So again, accounting for every single one of the quanta in my body would be just absolutely a silly thing to spend a lifetime trying to do. Just no point in it. Furthermore, and again, there's so much of this mathematics that I'm saying is already done. I don't need to redo Newton, and I don't even need to redo Einstein's convergent math, because his math isn't dimpled space, you idiot. His math isn't this gravity well thing. Okay, his math is just strictly the convergence, just the absolute idea that the space pulls in all directions. So his convergence is accurate. So the math for the convergence, I'm not disputing. Why do I need any new math? I'm arguing for a cause of the convergence. I mean, you still can't get that. I'm arguing that his cause of it, not dimpling space, is different. And that change in cause has applications to every single other phenomenon taking place. I might argue that there's probably some flaws in Einstein's field theory math, just because he's probably not accounting for the fact that gravity has to be induced. That the Earth isn't going to create, the Sun isn't going to create any gravity to the Earth until the Earth accelerates towards the Sun. So gravity has to be induced in the sense that it's through acceleration that you absorb direction, force, and it's when you absorb it that you prevent the other body from getting it, and once you prevent the other body from getting it, it absorbs acceleration in a direction, because the force has changed. And as it absorbs acceleration, it's preventing you from getting hit by the force, and so now you accelerate, and that's an induction of gravity. So I don't think Einstein understood gravity was induced through acceleration, but I can't say for sure. He did have a lot of acceleration components in his math, but I just don't know if there were acceleration components acknowledging that acceleration is induced by acceleration. The other body's acceleration induces your acceleration, and that's fundamentally what gravity is a feedback loop of acceleration that gets to a maximum point, and that would be your 22 miles per hour on the surface of Earth per second. I'll get to the miles per hour thing. It's just something I use for my own. I fully understand miles per hour mentally. I mean, it's really easy for me to convert that into feet and yards and distance, and so it just says more to me than if I say 10 meters per second. It just doesn't say as much in terms of a speed. I don't see things common in my life going 10 meters a second. Alright, furthermore, you actually need to know what kind of concepts you are rewriting. Furthermore, you actually need to know what kind of concepts you are rewriting. Well, again, these are just such, you're being, oh, this is, thank you very much, Mr. Patronizing God, but you haven't really explained how I haven't done that. You're not quoting anything I've said and disputing it. You're not saying, oh, gee, you said, and that is the most vacuous pile of shit ever said. You're not doing any of that, you obnoxious, patronizing prick. So until you do that, I'm going to call you an obnoxious, patronizing, well, I'll call you a cunt. This requires years and years of dedicated study in physics and what are known theories. Well, he says you again. So you say this is the only road to knowledge, and it doesn't really matter that your whole life you've spent basically immersed in mechanics, that you've worked in machine shops, that you've built robots, that you've spent lots and lots of times immersed in mechanical studies, whatever you want to call those. Not technical physics, but certainly practical physics, and therefore you're just not up to the game. Well, again, fuck you. The last mathematical and physicist geniuses who came up with most of their theories outside of universities were Ramanujan and Einstein at the beginning of the 20th century. Well, this is all crap you say. I mean, every scientist prior to Einstein pretty much was a gentleman scientist. I mean, a lot of these weren't formal scientists. These were just men who became obsessed with physics. I don't even know if you could take physics as a course in universities, once you go back too far. It was like natural sciences or something. So, fuck you. That you can do the same feat in the middle of the 21st century seems not possible. Well, again, seems not possible based on what? Your bigotry, essentially, and that's all you've got. Your petty bigotry. And again, what besides the Nobel Prize, what do I get when I prove you to be a fucking obnoxious, naysaying, nitpicking, dismissive cunt? What's going to be your fucking penance again? What are you going to do to make it up to me, you fucking snarky little useless naysayer? Since you just need to know so much theory that has come before you. Well, again, these are all statements from you, as if you've been to the mountain, you've seen the glory of God, and you're coming down the mountain, and you're going to tell me how the game works. I mean, it's just so fucking arrogant. And how are you proving your competence here? What statement have you made anywhere in any of these raggy, crappy comments demonstrating that you know any of this shit? Therefore, it seems not surprising that most Nobel Prize winners in physics were and are university professors. Well, most presidents were lying scum. So what do we draw? Let's draw some conclusions based on what you have to be a president. I guess you have to be a lying scum. So let's just write that as a law. You can't be. Why don't you tell every little kid who isn't a lying scum, hey, you're not a lying scum enough. You'll never be president, Jimmy, because all the presidents are lying scum. I mean, the fact that new physics is taking its marching orders from a pile of bullshit. I mean, all the popes were Catholics. I mean, yes, the same club is anointing the same club as pope. How should I be impressed by that? Oh yeah, that's right, I'm not impressed. And I'm making a counter argument, and I'm getting just raggy crap from cunts like you. So none of these fucking Einsteins of reality seem to have any balls. The only fruit they'll argue with is the lowest hanging fruit. Oh, I'll take on the religious idiots and people who don't know jack shit. People who haven't done jack shit, and I'll argue with them. But where are they showing any real balls to take each other on? Oh, that's right, they're not showing any. Lawrence Krauss and Brian Greene may not be the most dedicated academic physicists with the most impressive publication records. Well, it's not even just a publication record. It's just that, if you're going to argue for something, you have to have something called evidence somewhere, don't you? I mean, just to keep making shit up and saying, well, we do have this virtual particle, so, can I use those? Or shall I use dark energy? Which one of my Joker wild cards shall I just shove in my hand to say I have 5 aces? I mean, that's all they just keep doing. It's the most proven theory in the history of mankind. And it's made out of dark matter, Heisenberg, all a bunch of unproven dogma. You know, qualifying for the Nobel Prize. Well, anyway, but they are both educated professors of physics. Well, again, they have a badge. Okay. Does that mean they're right? Does it mean what they're teaching as physics is correct? Is it correct to demonstrate physics by going, the two-slit experiment demonstrates the 2 waves come out of the 2 slits and create a diffraction pattern, when we know a single slit creates the same pattern, just weaker? So is that an honest thing to do? Is that educating kids to tell them basically to distort perspective like that and pretend the 2 slits have something to do with the outcome, when they're basically saying, oh no, it doesn't really, because it doesn't matter where the light goes. No matter where it goes, it creates a million waves ahead of it, and all of those waves interfere with each other, and that creates the pattern. I mean, they'll break the rules wherever convenient. So they don't have any premises. Also, what they say is, for most part, not their personal opinion, but the opinion of the physics community. Well, I don't see any of that going on. They all seem to be riding their own little ego unicorns to the, fame trough. Look at me. I wrote a book. I did write a book called, I did write a book called blah, blah, fuck you. They're not talking about physics. They're talking about their own interpretation of, they might as well just be Jesuits, and they're all just going, well, look, I'm not a real Catholic. I'm a blah, blah, blah Catholic. The chances that an uneducated high school graduate who lives, whatever this is, seclusions in the woods of New Jersey is breaking the jackpot without any work. So again, this conclusion that I haven't earned perspective throughout my entire existence, examining the thing called existence itself, and that I would have acquired no knowledge of the mechanics of the universe at all relevant to drawing any of these pictures and being able to realize that, well, that's a flawed description of reality. Again, you're not arguing with what I'm saying. Do you have an explanation for the single slit diffraction that's rational, that can combine that justifies using waves on water as a description of the phenomenon, right? Because we know waves on water doesn't work for single slit diffraction. So do you have an explanation why they're using an analogy that doesn't apply fundamentally to the phenomenon that's happening with photons and electrons? The fundamental phenomenon it looks nothing like water waves with a single slit. Do you have an explanation or not? If I talk about Einstein's dimpled space and say, well, look, that's just a description of gravity because it's just an example of gravity. It's not explaining gravity, it's just showing you gravity. How is that skepticism converted into a question somehow not meritorious? How is that not a meritorious question that needs to be answered? Why are you using gravity to explain gravity? You can't really explain gravity using the mechanism you're supposed to be explaining. So that's sort of a dumb experiment. On the feet of thousands of scientists who have dedicated their lives to seems ludicrous. So again, you're just saying that I haven't worked as hard as Edison or Einstein, or I didn't do this, or I didn't do that, or I don't have a competent enough mind, or blah, 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 blah. And somehow I'm disqualified. And again, you're not doing anything, but I'm just arguing that, well, all I've done is ask a few honest questions, and then when I try to find answers to how it could possibly be that this seems to be a ludicrous duplicity, that they seem to be saying something based on evidence that doesn't exist, which is they're drawing all kinds of conclusions about reality, right? I mean, light went from particle to wave based on the two-slit experiment, an experiment that just screams for hard analysis. And what they do the simplest analysis possible, which is say, well, in one example, water, it looks the same. Sometimes. I mean, come on. It is easy to say you're a genius. It is harder to actually be one. Well, again, I don't think I ever said I'm a genius, so I think that's just bogus. I think it's just a bogus statement, but frankly, what I am saying is that, yes, I've quite obviously done something that apparently everybody in the universe thought was you had to be way incredible smart to know this, and you had to be too incredible human being, and you had to be all that kind of shit to be able to do this unification thing. And yeah, I spent 4 years dedicated to it. I already had some knowledge, again, but I only spent 4 years really thinking about it, and I found it. So fuck you. I mean, it's, you saying it's ludicrous that somebody could do that. Well, I guess knock knock, ludicrous is at the door, because it happened, shithead. And I think it's not really anything about me being great. It's about the science of physics being suckered. I mean, take that funny picture of Einstein with his tongue out, put it on a popsicle stick, wrap it in a little piece of paper, write sucker on it. Because, yeah, everybody just, Einstein came up with a neat little trick, but it was a trick. It's not reality. It's a trick. He fooled you. He shoved some pigeons up his sleeves. And I'm not even saying he did it purpose. I mean, Einstein fell asleep, some pigeons went up his sleeve, and they did a trick, and you all fell for it. Fuck. I mean, Einstein went to his grave pretty much saying, this all doesn't seem right to me. I mean, 2 years before his death, he's saying, look, I've been looking at this thing for 60 years, and I still can't figure out what a fucking photon is. It still doesn't make any sense. So, I mean, in spite of, Einstein was basically, find quotes of where Einstein was saying, well, I'd rather have been a plumber or something. So this is the guy's passion, right? That's the last thing in the universe I would have ever said, is that I have the opportunity to be a routine plumber who, fucks a few people's wives and stuff, or does some kind of crap like that. Just a silly little useless turd, or I can answer the most important questions an intelligence in the universe could ask, and he would choose to be a plumber. Well, I wouldn't. I would choose to answer the most important questions an intelligence could possibly answer. So I guess I'm more equipped for the Einstein job than Einstein, because frankly, I love the idea of answering these questions. And the fact that Einstein would have accepted a world where Einstein didn't exist maybe means Einstein just didn't really have a passion for it. And maybe that's why he didn't accomplish much of anything, once he got past 25 years of age. So anyway, I'll be back. Take a little break. Alright, back for more. So I'll do some more of the cranks, because I don't have much time, so I'll just do the crank comments for now. Anyway, I'm sorry, man, chemistry is not the Elizabethan craft of science, whatever that means. That would be physics. Well, again, I've always pointed out how physics is everything. Everything is physics, fundamentally. But I'm just arguing as scientists. I'm just saying that biologists and chemists seem a lot more careful than physicists. That's my only argument. Also, the theories in physics, especially quantum electrodynamics, are tested to a much higher significant level than the theories in biology. Well, again, they're not the same kind of theories. They're not trying to do the same thing. But the argument is I'm just saying the discipline is the same, in the sense that you have an effect and you want to figure out why the effect takes place. Yeah, okay, anthropology is kind of a messy business, right? Lots of fake dinosaur heads, lots of bullshit. So you could argue that, but I'm just saying it seems. It's just a general statement. You want to pick it to pieces, that's your prerogative. Maybe biologists, if they had more complex questions to answer, would make more fundamental mistakes. But I'm just saying, tends to be that they seem to be focused on a rational dynamic. I guess I would just argue, look, physicists have gotten it wrong every time they've been asked where they had a 50-50 chance of being right, they've got it wrong. Okay? What causes gravity? Pull or push? Okay, they decide to go with pull. It doesn't make any sense. It requires the creation of forces coming from inside a closed system. So they create universes to create that and all that kind of crap. Well, anyway, Then the two-slit experiment comes along. They have a choice. Like, we can blame the photon for the pattern, or we can blame the slit material, the actual structure it crashes into, or bangs into, or associates itself with. Which one's causing the effect? They decide the photon's doing it. So they had a 50-50 chance. They got it wrong again. I'm just saying, every time they have a chance to pick the right thing that's causing an effect, they pick the wrong thing. That's all. And they do it obnoxiously, and in a sense, without any scrutiny whatsoever. Once they choose something, they say, now we're going with that forever. That's the new dogma. Jesus is God. Yeah, fuck Muhammad for now. Something like that. I did want to point out that Crass guy, that stupid cunt. I heard him say something in one of the videos. I'm going to do some more of that Dawkins-Krauss thing because he says a lot of stupid fucking shit. But anyway, he said that, when they're doing this stupid thing now where they want to find a gravitational wave. And he says gravitational waves will prove multiverses. And it so pissed me off. He doesn't say again. But you know why? It's because he thinks a gravitational wave will be force. It'll be force coming from, 5 billion light years away. It's an actual physical energy force. And he doesn't understand gravity waves aren't created by creating more force. They're created by taking force away. It's an absence of gravity. That's what's making the wave you're seeing. A gravitational wave is created by an absence, a null. It's an absence of energy, not the presence of energy. That's what's creating the wave. You're taking away, you're creating the deficit. That's what's being revealed when two objects gravitationally spin around each other. There's a wave of full gravity, no gravity, full gravity, no gravity. It's the absence of gravity. So it doesn't prove anything. It's what it might prove, what it's, in a sense it proves is, yes, the background, well, something we already know, that gravity goes forever, but doesn't do any of what he's saying it does, because he doesn't understand the force. He doesn't understand that the wave is being created by an absence of force, not the presence of more force. So again, they picked the wrong one. They had it, they picked it, they had a choice. Is it, hey, gravitational wave, is it making more force, or is it making less force? And they chose the wrong one again. All right. To the magnitude of 10 to the minus third relative significance blah, 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 theories, as opposed to biological theories, which has a grand synthesis of evolutionary biology. Well, it's clearly the human genome. There's lots of things that have more complexity. The synthesis of evolution is a little bit complicated in comparing. Like, you could say something has this 97% of the same genetic code as some other being. But there's a whole bunch of analysis that has to go into whether it's 97% of old genes or new genes, and so it does get a little bit complicated. So I wouldn't minimize it that much. But anyway, I'm just saying they're seeming more cautious. That's all I'm saying. Biologists seem more cautious about jumping in and saying something. What else do I want to say that? Okay. So this whole thing. Okay. Well, like it or not, we. Who are you, fuckhead? Like it or not, we have tested the theories of quantum mechanics. Well, again, the theories of quantum mechanics or even quantum electrodynamics, I'm not disputing. I like the idea of quantum electrodynamics, which is basically diagnosing or describing the relationship between photons and electrons. And that's what's taking place. And it seems to me that all you quantum people seem to have forgotten all about the electron and its effects on photons. So, fuck you. Many times over, since it's relatively easy to repeat large number of collisions over and over again. Well, again, I'm not disputing. You're talking as if I'm saying in the two-slit experiment there's no pattern. That's not what I'm saying, asshole. I'm saying the pattern is an intrinsic function of the interaction of photons and electrons, or electrons and electrons. It is electrodynamics. It is the electrical force holding atoms together that's creating the pattern. There's real vector math involved in diffraction, and that's what's taking place. Photons are being diffracted, like they commonly are in lenses and lots of other things, and I don't need to turn the photon into an indiscrete, mushy nothing to come up with a theory on why that takes place. It has to do with the photon does have a reality, and it does affect the orbits, the momentum, the electrodynamics, the possession of directional information that an electron has. And it does it so precisely that those rules are so well solid, so unmutable, that something as long as a 5-mile radio wave can be received by an object, that somehow the object is going to know that was a 5-mile difference. It's going to be able to recognize those photons out of all these other photons, out of everything else happening, and you'll be able to extract that very impact of something that took 5 miles for one piece to get to it and then the next piece to arrive. That everything is orbiting so precisely, just like in our space probes, that we can shoot something off of the Earth and theoretically land it on Pluto without it having to do a single thing we didn't program into it. That everything will work exactly, everything will be exactly where it's supposed to be. And that's how precise it is. So don't tell me I don't understand this shit, you fucking cunt. Okay, therefore, quantum mechanics is the most pedantically tested theory in the history of science. Well, again, just this statement, again, as if that's supposed to mean something to me. You mean, yes, every time we shine a flashlight, this happens. Yes, who's disputing that? I'm not disputing that. Yes, shadows is the most tested theory in the history of the existence of the universe, the creation of a shadow. Yes, I would argue that shadows always come out as shadows, and there's no anti-shadow information available or evidence of anti-shadows. That's not what's being argued. What's being argued is what's causing shadows, jackass. So you telling me that shadows always show up is not countering my theory, you motherfucking cunt. So use some other argument, jackass. You haven't tested your explanation of why it happens. I'm not countering the fact of the inverse square rule. I'm not doing any of that, jackass. I'm explaining why there's an inverse square rule. I'm explaining why, because it's a fucking straight line force, because the goddamn force is made out of something just like photons, you motherfucking cunt. Alright, therefore quantum mechanics is the most, well anyway, with general relativity coming in second. Well again, if you think general relativity has been practically tested because you've all ridden on light waves and you've seen, when I run, I mean, this is how stupid his theory is, right? He thinks this is the real phenomenon, okay? There's me and my house. I'm standing in the front yard of my house. My house is big, it's really bigger than me, all that shit. I shoot off at in tremendous speed and I watch my house turn into a little tiny thing. So he thinks my house actually got smaller. I didn't just leave and the inverse square rule took over. No, my house is actually shrunk in the real universe. My house is now just a tiny little thing, and all I need to do is really just reach out there and pick up my house and I can just put it in my pocket. Because in the real world I exist in, my house is now just a little tiny thing. I mean, that's the bullshit of this crap. And then when I zoom back in, all of a sudden my house is big again. I've changed its reality. No, I didn't change a motherfucking thing. The only thing that changed is the observer prejudice, and that's what you people seem to be obsessed about. That's why you seem to be the religious kooks, because you keep saying I have God's perspective. My perspective is these perspective. So if my house shrinks, my fucking house shrunk. If I see it shrink, it shrunk. That's how stupid and myopic and moronic and religious you cunts are. So don't even tell me you're something called a scientist, because any fucking person with a little bit of reason could sit there and say, well, look, Einstein was smart and all, but that fucking Einstein thinks my house actually shrinks when I fly away from it, then Einstein's a motherfucking dumb cunt. Okay. You simply cannot ignore the main tenets of these two theories and replace them with 18th century ideas, they're really 16th century ideas, about mechanics. Yes, to say I can't disagree with your fucking theology, okay, that gravity's a pull force for which you haven't explained at all, where you create a fake model that doesn't work in reality. If I force you to make a three-dimensional model, you're creating a tremendous amount of energy somewhere, and you don't explain where it comes from. And what do you do to hide it? You create a fake goddamn dimension called space-time, and you hide all the energy in it. You just pull energy out anytime you need it, and you throw it back in when there's too much of it. I mean, if that isn't a fucking goddamn pigeons up your goddamn sleeve magic trick, so don't tell me who's pulling bullshit here, who's trying to fool people into believing nonsense. That's nonsense, okay? It's just nonsense for you to think that it's possible to have a pull force, all right, and then to sit there and say, I'm going to use the energy from another dimension, space-time, to create the force. Fuck you. That's lame as hell. We all like simple theories, but Einstein said things should be as simple as possible, but not any simpler. Yeah, well, what Einstein said, again, Einstein's a nice guy and all, and it was a nice try, but he missed. And you want to keep saying he didn't miss. Okay, you don't think there's anything wrong with creating a mechanism made out of nothing, okay, that's supposed to account for the something of a force strong enough to move planets. So, I just think that's pretty fucking lame. He's moving planets with space and time. Okay, fine. I think that's a pile of shit. Nature seems somewhat complicated when we get down to hardcore. Well, you've made it complicated because you've misidentified the functions, okay? You're making photons non-real. You're turning them into ghosts. I mean, you're the one creating a bunch of leprechauns and Sasquatches to complicate this whole fucking, it's actually doing biology by having some notion that Sasquatch really exist and leprechauns really exist. So where do they fit into the human genome? Where are leprechauns in the human genome? Yeah, well, if you start doing that shit, if biologists start doing that shit, then they'd be seeing a lot of crap and be saying a lot of crap, wouldn't they? If they believed leprechauns really exist and really had to account for them, wouldn't they start doing a lot of really dumbass, stupid things? Well, that's what you fuckers have done. You fucking injected a bunch of ghosts and mysticism into goddamn physics, and you've made a mess of it. You're the ones who complicated what was simple. The fundamental forces are so dirt simple, it's almost fucking amazingly how stupidly simple it is. It's a goddamn field with a bunch of things going in a direction. That's how fucking simple it is. And they only have one character, polarization. And everything in the universe can be accounted for because it has a starting position. And that starting position will cause probabilistic encounters that create bizarre configurations over time. And that's it. It's that fucking simple. The checkerboard of the fundamental universe is incredibly simple, and you people missed it. Haha. Mathematical elegance and symmetry. Again, mathematical elegance of, creating infinities, making gravity an infinite force, an infinitely strong force, mathematically, when you have no reason to think it's infinitely strong. Mathematical asymmetry plays, these people really think that you can create infinite gravity, that you could create a body like the size, just a solid mass as big as the Death Star, as big as a galaxy, make a sun as big as a galaxy, and you could put it in our fucking universe, and it could create, gravity where you would be accelerated to the speed of light by, you could be 1,000,000 miles from it, and your acceleration would be the speed of light. And he thinks that's possible. Well, it's not. The math says that's possible, but reason understands, well, it must not be possible because the universe obviously doesn't create anything like that. We are a printed page and very hard to understand. What? Let's see. A more elegant symmetry play surely an important role in modern theoretical physics. Well, again, I don't see anything at all symmetrical or elegant in this bullshit. I see strangled and obtuse. Let's create, okay, we have dark energy on the outside, we have dark matter on the inside, we have virtual particles pushing on the dark matter, and, and we have virtual quanta popping in and out of existence inside of the protons. Yeah, sure, that's really elegant. But the theories that postulate these paradigms are on a printed page very hard to understand, since you need to understand many elaborated mathematical principles and need to grasp these principles intuitively to some extent. Well, it says you, which requires years upon years of training and hard work. Yeah, you have to understand first that it's not going to be written in any kind of English. They're going to be just symbols, and the symbols aren't going to have written on them. Well, this accounts for the acceleration, for the period, the first period, the first half of the complete period of the time interval, blah, 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 blah. So yeah, if they have more elaborate, if they wrote out the equations with what the actual thing is, then it might be easier to follow why they're including a variable like that and why a variable like that might be important. But the math is followable to some extent. You understand the variables going in, which are the thing has a certain, it's going to have an interaction. Two complex things are going to interact. Two things with a billion pieces in it moving